I don't remember the first thing she said to me that semester. What I remember is the way her voice cut through the noise of the lecture hall, calm, measured, just a little husky. It wasn't the kind of voice you tuned out. It was the kind you carried with you long after class ended, like a melody stuck in your chest. Professor Marin Whitfield. Mid-40s. Sharp, elegant. She didn't waste words, didn't pander to anyone. The kind of woman who made silence feel heavier than speech. Most students avoided her office hours. Something about the way she held herself, all restraint and poise, made you afraid of wasting her time. But I went anyway. Not just once. Again and again. That day, the office smelled faintly of ink and strong coffee, the blinds half closed against the late afternoon sun. I was supposed to be there to go over my failing paper. Instead, I couldn't stop watching how the light touched her hair, how her glasses slid down the bridge of her nose as she read my essay. Her fingers, steady, precise, held the pages like they were fragile things. "You didn't answer the prompt," she said at last. Her tone was even, but her eyes lingered on me longer than necessary. "You wrote something else entirely." I shifted in the chair across from her. "I thought I was answering it." "You thought wrong." She tapped her pen against the margin, a small rhythm. "But," her voice faltered, just briefly, "it wasn't careless. You cared about what you wrote. I can see that." That pause, longer than it should have been. She should have moved on, should have handed it back and told me to try harder. Instead, she set the paper down carefully, folding her hands together, as though she were holding something back. I looked at her hands too long. She noticed. Her lips curved, just a fraction, not quite a smile. Then she asked, "Do you want to pass this class, Daniel?" It was supposed to be a rhetorical question. But the way she said my name, low, deliberate, made it feel like something else. "Yes," I said. Too fast. The silence after that stretched. I heard the hum of the old radiator, the faint tick of her clock. I thought she'd dismiss me, but instead she stood, smoothing the skirt of her suit, and crossed the room. The air shifted with her movement, the faint scent of her perfume, something warm, cedar and citrus, brushed over me. She didn't sit behind the desk again. She leaned against it instead, just close enough that the sleeve of her blouse grazed my shoulder as she adjusted a stack of books. Not an accident, not quite deliberate. "You know," she said quietly, "I don't usually explain myself twice. But I'll give you another chance. If you want it." Her hand brushed the edge of the desk, so near mine that the hairs on my arm lifted. She didn't look at me, she looked past me, toward the closed door. That's when I heard it, the faint metallic click. She turned the lock without a word. My breath caught. The room felt smaller, warmer. She finally looked at me, straight into me, her gaze steady and unblinking. "Let's see," she whispered, each word slow, deliberate. "How bad do you want to pass?" Before I could respond, before I could even swallow, there was a sharp knock at the door. The sound broke the silence like glass. Her eyes didn't leave mine. And neither of us moved. The knock at the door went unanswered. Whoever it was left after a moment, their footsteps fading down the hallway. But the silence that remained between us didn't soften, it thickened, like steam in a room too small. She exhaled, a quiet sound, almost a sigh. Then she straightened, brushing her hair back with a practiced, deliberate motion. "That's enough for today," she said, though her voice didn't quite match the firmness of her words. I gathered my papers, though my hands weren't steady. I told myself not to look at her, but my eyes betrayed me, tracking the lines at the corners of her mouth, the faint tiredness beneath her eyes, the way her blouse shifted with each shallow breath. When I finally stood, she was still leaning against the desk. She didn't move aside. For a heartbeat, we were too close, her perfume warm in the air, the sleeve of her blouse brushing my arm again. "I don't," she began, then stopped. Her gaze flicked to the floor, then back to me. "This isn't a game, Daniel." "I know." My voice cracked slightly. "I'm not." I cut myself off before I said not like them. Not like the classmates who whispered about her, who joked about her being untouchable. Her eyes searched mine then, longer than they should have. Something softened in her face, just briefly, before she looked away and stepped aside. I left her office with my pulse still hammering. But her voice stayed with me. So did the way she almost let herself linger. The next week, I forced myself to stay quiet in lecture. I took notes, pretended not to watch the way she tucked her glasses into her hair when she grew animated, or how her hands traced the air when she explained an idea. I told myself to stop noticing. But I noticed anyway. And she noticed me noticing. When class ended, most students filed out quickly. I stayed back, shoving books into my bag slowly, too slowly. She glanced at me once, then again, her expression unreadable. "Walk with me," she said finally, gathering her folders. We moved down the hallway side by side. She kept her pace measured, her tone clipped, but the small things betrayed her. The way her fingers brushed mine briefly when she shifted the folders into her other arm, the way she slowed when our shoulders almost touched. "You're young," she said suddenly, like an accusation. "I'm not that young," I countered, heat rushing to my face. Her lips pressed together, like she wanted to say more but stopped herself. "You don't know what you want yet." "That's not true." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time I saw the tiredness she carried like armor. Maybe it was years of being watched, judged. Maybe it was loneliness she never admitted. We reached her office. She paused, her key at the door, then turned back to me. The hallway was empty now, the fluorescent light humming overhead. "Daniel," she whispered, almost warning. Her hand lifted, hesitated, then settled lightly on my shoulder. Just a touch. Barely there. But her fingers lingered longer than they should have. I didn't move. Neither did she. And in that stillness, it felt less like a warning, and more like a beginning. Her hand left my shoulder the moment voices echoed down the hallway. Students laughing, footsteps closing in. She dropped her gaze, pulled her hand back as if burned, and turned the key in her office door quickly. "In," she murmured. I slipped inside. She followed, shutting the door behind us, the latch clicking too sharp in the sudden quiet. The office was dim, blinds half drawn against the late sun. She leaned back against the door, folders pressed to her chest, her breathing shallow. I stood by the desk, trying not to look at her. Failing. A text buzzed on her phone. The sound startled her. She glanced down, and in that flicker of hesitation I caught a glimpse of the lock screen, someone's name, unfamiliar, lingering longer than she meant to let me see. She silenced it quickly, placing the phone face down on the desk. The silence stretched again. "You shouldn't be here," she said softly. "You asked me to walk with you," I reminded her. "That was," she exhaled, rubbing her temple, "a mistake." But she didn't ask me to leave. I took a step closer, then another. The room smelled of paper and her perfume, the kind that clung to you after you brushed too near. She didn't move away when I reached the edge of her desk. "Why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice low. Her eyes lifted to mine. "Doing what?" "This." I gestured faintly between us. "Saying one thing, meaning something else." "Letting me." I stopped myself, jaw tightening. "Letting you what?" Her tone sharpened, but her body didn't match it. Her arms had dropped, her fingers brushing the wood of the desk, restless. "Letting me think." My throat was dry. "That maybe you want this too." The pause that followed felt endless. She didn't answer. Instead, she stepped closer, so close her sleeve brushed mine again, her hair grazing my jaw when she leaned to set the folders down. The nearness was unbearable. My heart pounded. Her hand lingered on the desk beside mine, her breath warm against my cheek. For a second, for one impossible second, I thought she would close the distance. But the door rattled. A hand on the knob. "Professor Whitfield?" A voice from the hallway. Another student. We froze. Her hand gripped the desk hard, knuckles pale. I couldn't breathe. I'll be out in a moment, she called back, her voice too steady for the way her chest rose and fell. The footsteps retreated. The silence returned. We didn't move. We couldn't. Our faces were too close, our hands inches apart. Every line of her body seemed pulled taut, resisting and giving in at the same time. Finally, she whispered, "Daniel, this can't." Her words trailed unfinished. But she didn't step back. And I didn't either. The office was too small, too quiet, and her nearness pressed on me like gravity. Neither of us moved, though everything inside me screamed to. Her hand finally shifted, brushing against mine where it rested on the desk. Not deliberate, but not an accident either. My breath caught. She noticed. "This is wrong," she murmured, barely audible. "Then tell me to go," I whispered back. Her eyes darted up, sharp, almost pleading, but the words never came. Instead, she turned slightly, her shoulder brushing my chest as she reached for the stack of papers. The movement forced her closer. Her hair slipped loose from behind her ear, brushing across my cheek. I couldn't help it. I lifted my hand, brushing it back gently, letting my fingers linger against her temple. She stilled. Completely. Her lashes lowered, then lifted again, slow, as if she were afraid of what I'd see. "Don't," she breathed, though her voice shook. But I already had. My hand slid down, cupping her jaw lightly, my thumb brushing the edge of her cheek. Her skin was warm. She leaned into it before she realized she had, then pulled back a fraction, guilt flooding her features. "I've spent years building walls," she whispered. "And you're pulling them apart without even knowing it." "I know," I said. Too honest. Too fast. "I see you." Her eyes flickered, sharp with something between fear and longing. For a moment she seemed to wrestle with herself, every line of her body taut, resisting. Then something cracked. She closed the distance, leaning into me, her forehead nearly brushing mine. I felt her breath, warm, uneven, against my lips. My pulse thundered in my ears. "Say you don't want this," I whispered, my voice trembling. She didn't. Her hand lifted instead, pressing lightly against my chest. I thought she was pushing me back, but her fingers curled, gripping the fabric of my shirt, holding me there. Her body leaned into mine, hesitant but unable to stop. I could feel the heat of her against me, the faint tremor in her hand. "This could ruin everything," she said, her voice breaking like a confession. "Or it could be everything," I answered. The silence after that was unbearable. Every inch between us screamed to be closed. My face tilted forward, hers too, until the barest space remained. I could almost taste the moment. The air itself held its breath. Her lips parted, just barely, when the hallway erupted with sudden noise. Laughter, the squeak of sneakers, voices carrying too close. She jerked back, chest heaving, eyes wide. But she didn't let go of my shirt. And in that suspended second, caught between restraint and surrender, she whispered the words that would change everything. "Daniel, I can't stop thinking about you." Her words hung between us, fragile, irreversible. "I can't stop thinking about you." Before I could answer, the sound of a phone buzzing cut through the silence. Hers, face down on the desk. She hesitated, then picked it up. Her eyes flickered over the screen, and for a second, something cracked across her face, something sharp, unguarded. She silenced it quickly, but not before I saw the name again. Elliot. Her hand shook as she set the phone down. "Who is that?" I asked quietly, not sure I wanted the answer. She looked at me, then away, fingers tightening around the edge of the desk. "It doesn't matter." But it did. The way she avoided my gaze, the way her shoulders stiffened, told me more than her words. My chest tightened. "Someone important?" Her silence was its own confession. Finally she spoke, her voice low and raw. "He was. Once. But it's over now, it has been for a long time." She drew in a shaky breath. "No one knows that, though. Not my colleagues. Not even my closest friends. They all think Her words cut off, and she pressed her lips together, hard. They think you're still with him, I finished softly. Her eyes lifted, sharp, startled, because I'd said it out loud. A flush rose to her cheeks, not from anger, but from the weight of being seen too clearly. She turned abruptly, brushing past me to the shelves, her shoulder grazing mine. The contact sent a jolt through me, even as her posture screamed retreat. You don't understand what people will say, she murmured, her back to me. I've already given them reasons to whisper. I can't give them this too. I stepped closer, close enough that I could see the slight tremor in her hand as she straightened a stack of books that didn't need straightening. Then why lock the door that day? Her breath caught. She didn't turn around. Why tell me you can't stop thinking about me? Her hand froze on the shelf. Slowly she turned, her eyes locking on mine. All the walls she kept in place, the careful professor, the untouchable woman, slipped just enough for me to see the truth underneath. Because I don't want to lie to myself anymore, she whispered. The admission stole the air from the room. I closed the distance in 2 steps. My hand found hers against the shelf. She didn't pull away. Her fingers trembled under mine, then threaded, hesitant, searching for the briefest, most dangerous contact. This is already too far, she said, but her body leaned into me, her forehead brushing my shoulder as though surrendering just for a second. I felt her warmth, her breath against my collar. My arm moved on its own, wrapping lightly around her, holding her there. She didn't resist. For a moment neither of us spoke. The weight of what we risked pressed down, heavy and real. Then, without lifting her head, she whispered, Tomorrow. Come back. And we decide. The next day, I told myself not to go. Told myself it was reckless, that every step down the hall was another step towards something I couldn't take back. But my feet still carried me to her office. The door was already half open, blinds tilted so the afternoon light striped across the floor. She stood at her desk, her posture tense, as if she'd been waiting all morning. When she saw me, she closed the door softly, carefully. The lock clicked again. Neither of us spoke at first. The silence was louder than words. My pulse pounded in my ears. You came, she said at last, her voice almost breaking. I couldn't not. She drew in a breath, like she needed to steady herself, but it came out uneven. She walked toward me slowly, each step measured, as if fighting herself with every inch. When she stopped, we were only a breath apart. This is the line, she whispered. Once we cross it, there's no going back. Her eyes searched mine, pleading, warning, wanting. I lifted my hand, hesitating, then brushed a strand of hair from her face. My fingers lingered against her temple, sliding down the curve of her jaw. Her lips parted with a shaky exhale. She leaned into my hand, just slightly, betraying the restraint she tried so hard to keep. I should stop this, she said, but her voice was barely there, more a confession than conviction. Then stop me, I whispered back, leaning closer, my forehead almost touching hers. She didn't. The space between us collapsed. Not all at once, but in stuttered, aching steps, her hand brushing against my arm, my thumb tracing her cheek, the warmth of her leaning into me like gravity pulling her closer. I could feel her trembling. Or maybe it was me. Her breath brushed my mouth, hot, unsteady. The world outside ceased to exist, the hall, the whispers, the rules, all swallowed by this impossible nearness. Finally, she whispered, almost like a surrender, I don't care anymore. And then she kissed me. It wasn't polished, wasn't careful. It was messy, desperate, the kind of kiss that carried years of restraint unraveling all at once. Her hands gripped my shirt, pulling me closer, while mine cupped her face like I was afraid she'd vanish if I let go. The kiss broke, just slightly, both of us gasping for air, our foreheads pressed together. This is madness, she breathed, but there was no distance in her voice. Then let's be mad, I said. Her laugh, half sob, half relief, shook against me. She leaned back in, slower this time, deliberate, and kissed me again, softer, surer. When we finally pulled apart, she didn't look away. Her eyes, tired, guarded, but open now, met mine without hiding. "Now you know," she whispered. And I did. For the first time, I saw her, not the professor, not the untouchable woman, but someone who wanted me as much as I wanted her. No more denial. No more pretending. Whatever came next, it was real. After that kiss, nothing looked the same. The books on her shelf, the desk scattered with papers, even the ticking clock, all of it felt charged, marked by what had just happened. We didn't speak right away. Words felt too clumsy for the weight of it. She stayed close, her hand still holding onto my shirt like she wasn't ready to let go. I held her just as tightly, my palms splayed against her back, memorizing the shape of her there. Finally, she pulled back enough to look at me. Her eyes were softer now, but glistened with the worry she still carried. "You're going to regret this," she said quietly, almost to herself. I shook my head. "I don't. Not for a second." Her mouth curved, not a smile, exactly, but something caught between fear and relief. "Daniel, you're young. I've lived long enough to know how people will talk. Let them," I whispered, and without thinking, I threaded my fingers through hers. Her hand fit in mine awkwardly at first, then settled, our palms pressing together like something inevitable. "I don't care about them." Her thumb brushed against mine, hesitant, then firmer, like she wanted to believe me. "I've been alone a long time," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I told myself it was safer that way." "And now?" I asked. She leaned her forehead against mine, closing her eyes. "Now it doesn't feel like safety anymore. It feels like hiding." I kissed her forehead gently, lingering there. Her breath shuddered out, her body softening against me. We stayed like that, forehead to forehead, breathing the same air, letting the silence carry us. "I don't want to hide either," I said finally. The clock ticked on. The world outside the office carried on, students laughing in the hall, doors opening and closing, but in here, it felt suspended. Just the two of us, holding on to something fragile but real. She sank into the chair by her desk, pulling me down with her. For the first time, she looked less like the professor, less like the woman holding everything together, and more like someone letting herself exhale. Our hands stayed clasped, fingers interlaced, resting on her knee. "I don't know where this goes," she admitted softly. "Neither do I," I said. "But we'll figure it out. Together." Her eyes lifted to mine, and this time, she did smile. A small, real smile that felt like sunlight breaking through. The doubt, the fear, the hesitation, they were still there, but lighter now. What was heavier, what mattered more, was the warmth of her hand in mine, the closeness of her body leaning against me, the certainty that neither of us wanted to step back anymore. And for the first time, that was enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?